back in the days, you needed millions and millions or dozens of millions of dollars to invest. And right now, as a small player, you can start smaller things. I'm not sure how big TikTok is in the US still, yeah, but that's the thing. Every insurer could start with that, or even agents and brokers could, try to get in touch with their client base. Of course, it's rules, regulations. It won't change. Not one single action will be the game changer, but the sum of 1,000 needles, that's what's going to change and differentiate you from your competitor.
That's Dr. Robin Kiera, and this is the future of insurance. This episode is brought to you by Medallia, the market leader in customer and employee experience. Their award-winning SaaS platform, Medallia Experience Cloud, makes all your other applications customer and employee aware. Medallia uses proprietary AI and machine learning to reveal predictive insights that track powerful business actions and outcomes. Leading insurers like the Hartford and Farmers use Medallia to reduce churn, turn detractors into promoters, create in-the-moment cross-sell and upsell opportunities, and drive revenue-impacting business decisions. Learn more at Medallia.com. And the Future of Insurance book series, available exclusively from Amazon or at future-of-insurance.com.
Dr. Robin Kiera, thank you for joining me on the show. I'm excited to get into it with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I think you have more energy than anybody in the insurance industry. So it's very excited to bring you on and to steal some of that energy into my show. Where did you get into insurance? Because you do a lot of marketing work as well, but how is the insurance side? How did that grow within you to the point that you released the insurance shoe?
That's for sure. So I'm a recovering sales agent. I've sold insurances on the streets and the couches of Hamburg, Germany. But I complained a lot about the C-suits on stage showing us the digital future, but we were working with actually phones that didn't have any internet, and that was 2013. And we all know we actually had internet back in that day. I was then punished to go to the headquarters and to do it better yourself. So I know the sales and the non-sales part of insurance. And what then happens, I went to a startup when it was not cool yet to go to startups. And I founded a blog at some point because I saw old white men on stages. I mean, I'm a white man too, but I saw old white men on stages looking like Easter communist parties in the 80s saying the internet will go away and the agent will win. And you're like, do you actually see reality? I spent a lot of time in the US in the 2000s. So I saw what was coming. I was traveling to Asia and I was see the changes, and it didn't take a genius to make the translation to what does it actually mean for the insurance industry for us here back home in Europe. So I began to rant on stages because I actually had left the industry, and I always said to myself, and if I never get a job in the industry, I don't care. I founded a blog, the blog exploded, and that led to somebody calling me an influencer, which actually I first needed to check if that's an insult or not. Obviously, it's not. I really Googled it actually. The funny thing is the person that named me, that called me that, now is a very good friend of mine, just to see how things go. We then slowly started also to help banks and insurers to figure this internet thing out in marketing strategy, but also in some product areas. And we have a pretty, since I'm, before COVID at least, I was traveling a lot. We have a pretty good impression also from, ecosystems outside the country.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You have a huge following. And so I had the pleasure of joining you on one of your live shows, and you were, I've done a lot of podcasts and everyone always lies about the numbers. So they give you like the aggregate number of downloads when they're saying how many people listen to the show, aggregate over time. So you gave me a sense, but that was roughly what we had on the live show in terms of people who chose to join in during their day to hear two guys talking about changes in insurance. So that speaks to that influencer tag being valid.
I should change the way I present it. I should aggregate it more. That sounds better than just say the honest number. But I think that's our approach in general, to say let's be honest. I always say when we are in pitches, if you want to hear from your external consultants what you want to hear, then we're not. It's not our game. We will tell you what we think. If it's critical, in a room only us. but we don't sugarcoat, and that doesn't make us friends with everybody, but with enough to have our business running. And a lot of people appreciate that. And
Yeah.
the great thing about not about focusing on these things, on being honest and all of that, it's easy. Lying is exhausting.
You have to keep it all straight. So, Robin, if you were living in the midst of that internet, I mean, it sounds silly to be like the internet being a real thing, but
Yeah.
there were these sort of two war cries. One, in the early 2000s, the agent's dead. It's going to be all done over the internet, and we still have plenty of agents today. But then the other side saying, "Oh no, it's just a flash in the pan. You can ignore that," or we're digital now because we don't do paper bills. And like, well, that came up in another episode where someone was holding that up as like, see, we're digital. We don't have paper bills anymore. It's like, yeah, that's one little thing, but that's not really what the transformation's about. As we look today, and especially over the course of last year, a lot of amplification or speeding up of digitization, transformation, and maybe acceptance that we can't keep doing things the way that we did. What are some of the modern themes that are pressing right now that you think are pushing the industry, and maybe
Well,
where you see it differing by geography or by market?
so I would differentiate not between geography, even though there are a lot of regulatory differences and channels, and some have strong brokers, some have strong agents, some have strong direct. I see a big difference between the size of the insurer. I see there's a paradigm shift. Back in the days, it was very important to be big and large, and you can only grow when you grow via with agents and brokers, for example. But what we see now is I really see different countries, smaller and mid-sized player, large MGAs, but also smaller insurers, mid-sized insurers, led by visionary people. Doesn't mean to be young, it's not a 20-year CEO. We also have 60, 65-year-old CEOs, women and men that do a great job. And they have, since 2, 3, 4 years, and some even longer, done a great job. And now you slowly see the fruits coming from that. And I see this around the world. You have some stars, like in Chinese large insurers that have amazing digital capabilities. But I see, especially in traditional, more mature markets, I see these differentiation between some exciting smaller players growing over market average right now. Especially so when you're a small player out there, it's now your time to actually think about how can I beat my competition. And I actually have one of our core clients. He said, Robin, do you actually know why we hired you as this wild new company? And it was one of our first clients. And he said, if I want to beat the biggest in the market, I cannot hire the same people as the biggest. We need to do things differently. And I think this is a sort of mindset. This is number one. The first thing is mid-size and smaller insurers. I think a big advantage currently, if you're bold, or at least a little bit of bold. And the second thing is, it sounds like a buzzword, but it's not, to become part of the daily life of your clients. It can be B2B, it can be like industrial clients, it can be commercial clients, it can be private clients. Become part of the daily life of your clients. And then when people say, oh yeah, we have erased paper trails, that's important, so your client doesn't kill himself because of the pain you inflict on him because of the processes. But actually, that's like the basic. You need to have digital services. For example, when you're a P&C insurer, and the person has a valuable car collection or something like that, why not ping him when a hailstorm is coming up, or a commercial line, and when you have a big shipping fleet, and why do you not provide digital services? Because one thing we have in the insurance industry, that's knowledge, and that's like the second layer. And the third layer is share our stories, share the good thing we do. I mean, we are the insurance industry, one of the most important industries around. Why? Because we save people. Most of the ventilators currently used around the world, guess who paid for that? The insurance industry, of course, our members and people that have our products. But I think that's an important note to have. We need to talk more about what we do good. We also mess up, don't get me wrong. Yeah, we mess up sometimes, and not everything is rainbow and sunshine. But when we do good things, people don't talk about it, and we need to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. We also talk about, we do talk about some things that maybe we take credit for that aren't all that special or aren't that. So like when you talked about being part of the customer's daily lives, I see some carriers who are doing that really well and thinking about it the way you're talking about, and others who are sort of claiming it, even though actually from the customer standpoint, it's like, I don't care about that. That's not actually engaging with me. So sort of like old mindset, taking an old approach to it and then taking credit for it as if it's something big, or like the e-billing, like, oh, well, we're doing this. Okay. You're making it sound like you've achieved something, but you haven't really pushed yourself out of the more linear thinking of what you've always done.
Yeah, and it can. And the great thing is, back in the days, you needed millions and millions or dozens of millions of dollars to invest. And right now, as a small player, you can start smaller things. I'm not sure how big TikTok is in the US still, yeah, but that's the thing. Every insurer could start with that, or even agents and brokers could, try to get in touch with their client base. Of course, it's rules, regulations. It won't change. Not one single action will be the game changer, but the sum of 1,000 needles, that's what's going to change and differentiate you from your competitor. And when I say become parts of the daily life, it's not that you buy a lot of TV ads and penetrate your market like that, but it's becoming a meaningful part of the daily life. Products and services. It can be information. And we have a lot of special events in our lives, maybe college. It can be getting a child, marrying, planning for pension. So in every life, you have different very important points in which insurance can play an important role. Why don't we help actually people when they get children? And I have a funny story. A friend of mine is one of the largest brokers around here, like more ship stuff what he does. And we got our first child, at the same point in time. And he said, and we did discuss the things, what do you do when they're sick and how do you notice, how much do they eat, what's good, what's not bad. And then I asked him, who do you actually ask for this? And he said, family, friends, and Google. And I was like, why don't you ask your insurers? And he looked at me like, oh, Robin, you have been drinking, huh? I'm like, no, it's 10 a.m. in the morning. It's even early for me. But what I want to say with that is that insurers have such a tremendous amount of knowledge about these life events. For example, getting a child, health insurance, accident insurance, liability insurance, law. There's so many knowledge we have, but we do not put it in a way that our clients understand it, it's value for them, and we just keep it for ourselves. But we know all of this, and that's expensive. Why? That's actually something we have more than tech giants that are attacking us. They don't know that in the way we do. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because when you spell it out like that, we have a lot of knowledge throughout the life cycle of our various insureds, and for all the prospects or other insureds out there, what can we do to not just use that data for underwriting insights and claims insights, but actually provide it back to them to help guide them through their life. That like a medical example is brilliant, because as a health insurer, you will aggregate up all sorts of health events throughout different ages and situations and whatnot. What if you made that into powerful insights to help inform and guide what your insureds choose to do through their life?
But please don't do the white paper nobody reads. Don't do the study nobody consumes. Put it into a GIF, light, digestible sort of information your target group, your clients, your potential clients are interested in. Why not partner up with media or with platforms that really value that? Yeah. And again, I think it's not about knowledge only, it's about putting knowledge into a format people really consume. And yes, TikTok may not be the same as, 11 volumes of some, Dickens poem. I understand this, but this is reality. That's where the tension right now. We are not in the 19th century anymore, by the way, thank God. But we need to accept the reality of these days. And when a client or certain clients group want that we provide micro video content to them, then it's our duty to do that. Yes, and then we can become part of the daily life. And content to produce is very inexpensive. Digital service, it's a little bit more tricky, especially if you have legacy IT, and to build even products that are more modern and help even more difficult. But every single level, from content, IT services, and products, we can actually improve, and it doesn't cost $1 billion.
Yeah, I'm struck with an idea that all of that is insurer to consumer, whether it's a business consumer or a personal consumer. the tech model would be data as the product, right? So is there a story with that knowledge, those insights going into a consumer facing consumption brand like Uber or Amazon or whatever, and informing the way that they're interacting, so that the carrier's not trying to rebuild the level of connection that, you know, a day-to-day brand has, a Netflix or whoever, but instead is selling that knowledge, those insights, so productizing their understanding of decisions and you know, risk aversion and whatever, productizing that into another platform that has more of that consumer connection. Is that a path, or does that then mean that the insurer's brand is not being strengthened at all?
Well, the big advantage from us, from the insurance industry to other industries, is we still have a lot of, cash in our in our drawers. So why should we give up when we still have some potential? That would be for me the last resort before giving up. Or actually, it's a sort of giving up when you say you do not want to stay close to your end consumer. But that doesn't mean, so I would not argue for that. I would say try to do it yourself, but why not partner with them? But it doesn't mean to sell or to get a little bit of cash flow from selling data. I think that's the potential reputation damage is so large, at least in certain areas around the world, that it probably does not outweigh the little money you make with that. The big money you make when you're very close to the client and when you deliver products and services to the client in the moment they need it. That's the magic moment. And when I was an agent, I called these clients and they said, "Oh, I just bought a house. I just did all the mortgage with the bank, and they also sold me some insurance. How nice is that?" Yes, duh, you should have thought at me, but it was not their fault. That was my fault. I was not on their radar, on their mind in the moment they needed. And that's what the whole strategy is. Be in the mind, on the radar of your clients in the moment they need your product, and they even don't know it. That's even better.
That's really interesting. I'm just reflecting on any call I've had with my financial planner when he's like, let's check in, and I'm like, I don't have anything to discuss. He's a nice guy, so I always give him time. But then, like, sure enough, that 15 minutes that I thought we'd do is an hour and 15 minutes, and it's like every time we're saying goodbye, I'm like, oh, actually, as I think about it, I should probably talk to you about this too. And it's like, if he didn't reach out, even though I didn't see a purpose for it, we would never have talked through all these things that ended up being important.
And I think when we talk about the first layer, which is the content layer, to stay in touch with your clients, to be in touch, as you say, with your financial player is super expensive. 1 hour, 15 minutes. How many sales does he need to make a day? And it's not scalable. So he would, if he wants to grow 10 times, he needs to hire 10 times more people. And that is the old model, how we grew in the insurance industry in the sales departments. And I think what we see now actually is that we can, with content, which doesn't make a difference if your video is seen by 1 person or 1 million person, doesn't make a difference but if you have 1 sales call or 10,000 sales call done by humans, that's a big cost difference. So it's even more efficient. It's modern if you at least try with content to stay on the radar of your clients. And your financial advisor, I would heavily advise him to invest heavily into content production, into social media, but in formats that people excite, so that you actually at 11 o'clock at night watch this video because it's funny, it's entertaining, and you learn a little bit of something.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. We do enjoy talking to each other, so that would hurt. But I can still do that as a friend. You talked about the difference between company size and that can be an advantage if you're bold. So size in and of itself isn't enough. You still have to be willing to push ahead. Where you didn't see a difference between markets, I had a conversation recently with Teresa Blissing. We're talking about the Asian market, and there are some fundamental differences that I would say Europe has over the US as well around mobile computing and people's acceptance. Like, texting was a completely normal thing in Europe long before it ever was in the US. We never adopted it until actually quite recently in the grand scheme of things. You go into Asia, you go into Africa, the only computer many people had, and perhaps the only phone many people had, is a smartphone. So their first way of transacting digitally started with mobile. And US and Western Europe don't have that. So it's allowed for more flexibility and solutions and digitization in these, developing markets that the developed world is actually behind on. Are you seeing the same sort of thing? Or are you seeing some variations based on how consumers behave and what tools they're using to behave with that either are driving a difference or a potential, a different potential in a given market where, some may be lagging?
Yeah, totally. We see different phases of the internet around the world. It's really sometimes interesting that we have friends also in Africa, and they say, "Oh, Robin, what should we do?" I'm always asking, guys, we should ask you what you guys are doing, because they have finance systems based on non-internet phones, and they have developed some interesting solutions, almost frictionless. And I think that's something, I think all ecosystems can be inspired from each other. I'm not sure if old labels still stick. So yeah, I see this in Africa: mobile only, mobile first, low cost phones and being devices for insurance and finance. Asia having lots more digital services in a lot of regions, and also ensures that we are more going into that direction. The big question is also in different Asian countries. You have, but Teresa will probably have told this 20 times better than I did. You have different, levels of maturity of the insurance industry. So you have some where the willingness to invest into insurance is very low, some is very high or higher, and I think that's a big topic. I think I see the big difference in how you see technology. Do you see technology as an enablement for your own or personal rise as a society? Do you see it as a chance or as a threat? And sometimes I see in US a little bit, but especially in Europe, that technology is seen as a threat. And then, by the way, also insurance decision makers can play on it and say, oh, we just take this trend in society and say tech is a threat, and then we can still do our paper stuff.
Yeah, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. And when you said the maturity of the insurance market in those countries, I wonder if that's similar to your point about size. So, if you're in a market with Western Europe, North America, you have massive tens of billions of dollars or euro size players, hundreds of billions. You're getting into the trillions now when you talk about the assets, versus an economy like Cambodia or Malaysia or Nigeria or Kenya, or wherever, where the market is so much newer and smaller and maybe allows for that flexibility because we don't have 200 years and hundreds of billions of dollars stuck in a particular way of thinking and doing. Do you think that might contribute to it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we should just talk about the contextual or the effect of different contexts. If that really is the trigger, I don't know, because we live in a global world. I know that's a buzzword, and I surely should pay now $1 in for using this buzzword, but it is surely a global world. So everybody around the world can be inspired or steal ideas, and stealing is maybe the wrong word, but copy or be inspired by best cases and use cases around the world. And I think that's, by the way, also one thing we do as a company. We are not focusing on the German market, even though my accent is very strong. But we get also best practices from around the world, from the US, from the Midwest. There are some interesting insurers there, from Israel, and give it to clients here, and the other way around too. So I think context is not an excuse anymore. It's more a mindset. Do you actually want to grow? I have sometimes the discussion with insurers, and 2020 was a record year for a lot of insurers. Yeah. Let's see, 21, I'm not so sure, and 22, I'm pretty sure they're not. Because of the system of our industry and the pandemic. But a lot of cases, they say, oh, we grew only 0.1% lower than the market, or we grow, I don't know, 1% more than the market, gigantic. I'm saying yes, but why don't you want to grow 25% more?
Right.
And then I think we have lost two things. First of all, we have lost our capabilities to dream as an industry. What could we actually play for a role in the insurance industry? We could be a vital part of society, not only behind the scenes, but actually in public. Why can't we actually expand our value chains? Why can't we not only talk about the best, food for babies. Why don't we just sell it too? Why don't we become actually the trusted Amazon? I don't know. Now while Jeff is gone, he could maybe, take over that one.
Yeah, he could have a new idea to go play with.
And the second thing is really so first one, we have lost the way to dream. I think that's a good one. And I think we have lost the sides. What are we actually? We are not an insurance industry. We are in the end a sum of capital. And I learned this with Karl Marx. He was not only a communist but also an economist actually. And he said, the use of capitalism is to make out of capital a little bit more capital.
Yeah.
And when you have this thinking, you can never say in any industry, we are special. We cannot do it because we are. Because when it can make you more out of your capital, you should consider that. And then the expansion of value chain actually is easier when you think agnostic that you are part of a certain industry. And the last thing I think we also do not talk about so much, and I think we've lost it all, so is we do not provide products. We do not provide risk coverage. What we provide is we protect families. We help people getting healthy. We are there in the darkest moments of our clients. I mean, go to a business that just burned down and the firefighters are still working on it. Who is standing next to the entrepreneurs? A lot of times the broker or the agent with the first check and says, Paul, don't worry, we got you covered.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about that.
Yeah. So you've seen my book. That's what I start the book with. And that's when people make fun of the industry or make jokes about being in a boring space. I always remind them, this is incredibly important. We're there for the world at its worst moments, or to help make those moments less of a blocker so they can go about whatever they wanted to do with their lives. And that's profound. That's not like, oh, it's boring and no one wants to talk to me at a dinner party and hear what I do. That's a real purpose, but we need to remind ourselves of that and remember it's not just a piece of paper with some legalese on it. It's actually something quite profound at the end of the day. Robin, this has been good, and I appreciate the challenge to my context point, because I agree with you. It can be an excuse very quickly if we're not careful, and it doesn't need to be. Are there any parting thoughts, parting wisdom to help energize the industry moving forward that you'd share?
Yeah, independently of the crisis ahead, the worldwide, the global economic crisis that I think will hit us sooner or later, some countries sooner, some countries later. I think it's super important to think about one thing. And this one thing is we need to become parts of the daily lives of our clients, because nothing is better than when the client calls us, that he identifies us with the solution of a certain problem, and then he asked us for helping him, instead of that we are being late all the time, as I was as a mediocre sales agent.
Yeah, well, that's really valuable advice, and finding a way to do that with scaling and using newer, more flexible content sharing tools so that we can do that at scale without having to make these hour and 15-minute calls that I get stuck with. It's great. Thank you so much for the energy and for the insights. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for bearing with me and my tech difficulties.
It's good. Thanks, Robin. Thank you to Dr. Robin for coming on the show and sharing his energy and his insights and his push for us as an industry to keep engaging differently and thinking about media in a new way, because we need to. And if you think it doesn't apply to insurance, stuff going on with digital media and digital ways of interacting with customers differently through social media like TikTok, he will prove you wrong, because he has a massive following on every platform and it's wild. He's talking about insurance, people are engaging, so something to watch for. Dr. Robin Kiera brought some of that insight today. Thank you to him again for coming on. Thank you to Medallia for making this show possible. They sponsored this episode and I'm very grateful for that. And thank you to all of you for listening. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell for notifications and spread the word. Tell other people about the show. That's the way that these things get around. We can start to impact the industry by sharing the insights from these conversations if more people listen. So subscribe and tell someone you care about in this industry who wants to see change to listen. or watch if that's what they prefer. You know, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, like wherever they want to take in podcasts, they can do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and make sure you hit the show notes for more details, including links to get the music if you like the music in this show from Upbeat Music. And I will see you guys for another episode soon.